right, tell a friend to tell a friend. We're back. Welcome to another edition of the 24th Floor. We've been seeing some big shakeups in college football. Some teams dropping out of the poll. Some teams making big jumps up in the poll. With all that being in mind, let's jump into today's big idea. We're talking college football. Richard?
Man, Ruben, you know what it is. How about them Tigers? Through 2 games, the Memphis Tigers doing what they are supposed to do, but it doesn't come without a little razzle-dazzle. Go ahead, give me that big idea. For one half against the Georgia State Tigers, that was a bit too close. Oh, Georgia State Panthers, my bad. The Memphis Tigers trailed at times, and it took a 55-yard field goal at the end of the half to take a halftime lead. Second half, quarterback Brendan Lewis, number 2 on the field, but number 1 in your hearts. He looked more like what we saw in week 1 against Chattanooga. 68 rushing yards, a touchdown to go along with it, with 16 of 20 passing and 196 yards. Tigers defense tightened up to hold Georgia State to 76 total yards in the second half as they went on to win in my hometown 38-16 in hot Atlanta. They'll look to keep that going against Troy this Saturday. And drum roll.
That means we got to bring in our guy who knows the Tigers like the back of his hand, the inside man for the commercial appeal.
And a frequent friend of the program, JD, Mr. Jonah Dillon.
JD, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, let's get right to it. Richard alluded to it a little bit about a not so stellar, let's say, first half, a closer game than some people may have liked. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think defensively there were a few different issues. Tackling was the top one probably, and then still just kind of getting used to each other, right? We've talked about this defense, a lot of new players, a lot of talent, but they still got to figure out how everyone is going to fit together. I think we saw some confusion in that first half, especially, Georgia State playing multiple quarterbacks. The middle of the field was wide open for pretty much the entire half. This is a team that's been pretty good at halftime adjustments. They went in at the half, figured it out. Defensively, they were a lot better in that second half. Offensively, I think part of it was kind of grinding Georgia State down, especially we know this Memphis team, it's going to be all about running the ball, right? And they ran the ball in the second half. When you do that, you're going to kind of grind teams down, and they did that and were a lot more successful down the stretch. And so it all ended up working out 38-16 the way that you would have hoped. But like you said, definitely some concerning moments in that first half.
Tell me what you liked from Brendan Lewis in last week's game.
Yeah, efficiency is the top thing. I mean, he's completing most of his passes. Now, I know people can say he's not really throwing the ball downfield a lot. It's a lot of underneath things. And, the run game is setting up the pass game. And that's what this offense is going to be. But Memphis can win a lot of games by just having Brendan Lewis do those game manager type things. Don't turn the ball over. Run it when you need to, and be able to complete a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 pass to move the chains. If he can do that, there's a lot of games Memphis is going to be able to win just by doing that. Now, there's a couple where you might need to throw the ball down the field a little bit more, but I think we'll see that later in the season.
What can we expect this week? You have this week that sets up for the following week. You start to get this buildup of bigger and bigger games. What can people expect to see this week out of the Tigers when they take the field?
Yeah, this feels like a kind of weird, tricky game, right? On the road for the second straight week against a Sun Belt team, not a team that we normally see Memphis playing. And then obviously you've got the Arkansas game coming up next week. So it kind of clearly looks like one of those trap game spots. And I think trying to avoid that is the biggest storyline. Troy is an interesting team. They were winning at halftime last week against Clemson. And a lot of people saw that, and they don't realize that obviously Troy, they didn't play well in the second half. They lost that game. And I think Memphis is the better team. We saw Memphis play against Troy last year in Memphis and kind of dominate them. It feels like Memphis should be able to win this game. But if you look at the line, I think it started at 6.5 and it's come down, and now I think 3.5. So a lot of people believe in Troy, or they at least believe that Troy can keep this game close. That's an interesting storyline, because before the season, I would not have said to expect a 3.5 line for this game.
So with that being said, with the game being so close, what will it take for the defense to kind of come out and hold Troy in place like they did with Georgia State in the second half? So why do you think that line is so close? So do you think that bettors or Vegas is questioning Memphis defense?
I think a lot of it is perception, right? They saw that Troy was doing really well, winning on the road again at halftime against Clemson last week. That was a weird game. There was a weather delay. And like I said, Clemson figured it out in the second half. I think the perception is there. I think, look, if you watched the first half of Memphis against Georgia State, you saw the concerns. You saw what the issues were. And Troy has done some things offensively. They've got a running back, Tay Meadows, who's I think 7th in the country in rushing through 2 weeks. Now, obviously, that's a small sample size. But you're talking about an offense that can do some things. Goose Crowder, all-time quarterback name, obviously, is a solid quarterback, and he's back, and he's been in that system. And I think there's reason to believe that Troy can at least keep this game competitive. And then if you're in the second half and it is close, you never know what's going to happen, especially in a road environment.
I would be, every coach says we're just focused on this week. But there is a really big game looming that could potentially have great implications for bowl games later in the season. So if Arkansas was to beat Ole Miss and Memphis wins against Troy, then Arkansas and Memphis play and Memphis wins that game, that could really help Memphis down the line when you start talking about bowl consideration. How hard is it to stay focused on Troy when you know you got that potentially nationally televised game coming up in just a couple weeks?
At home, too.
At home, yep.
Yeah, at home. And look, like that's the game that everyone's been talking about all offseason, right? Like in the summer, nobody was talking about, I can't wait for Memphis against Troy, right? They were talking about this game. And they were talking about Arkansas. And look, it's understandable. We had that happen last year, right, with the Florida State game. Now, that was on the road, but it was kind of the talk all offseason. Now we're in a situation where this team, they feel like they're ready to go compete with Arkansas. And I think a lot of people, when we get to that game, are going to say this should be a competitive game the way that we're talking about Memphis against Troy right now. And so you do have to make sure you don't fall into those trap game type things. This looks like the classic trap game spot, right? You've got a kind of weird situation. It's going to be maybe a sleepy start. Memphis is staying in Montgomery. They're going to have to wake up and drive an hour to get to Troy. So 5 or 6 a.m. wake up call. You're playing against a team that people aren't really up for. You have Arkansas next week, and that's going to be a big atmosphere and big for the fans. It feels like it could be one of those slow starts.
All right, Jonah, as usual, you did a great job getting us ready for this week's game. And, of course, we'll be looking ahead in the future as well. Got to say thanks again for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No doubt about it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some Ole Miss Rebels football. They got a big game. Talking about Arkansas, they got to play Arkansas. We're going to be checking in, getting that inside scoop right after this. All right, it's time to talk Ole Miss. And the Rebels got their first SEC win of the season last week when they beat Kentucky.
Redemption.
A little revenge game there. Kentucky got them the year before. But now you don't get to rest because now things get even tougher, or they stay tough. You're talking about taking on a very tough Arkansas Razorback team who is coming in undefeated as well and ready to get a win.
And you can't talk Ole Miss without this man in the conversation. He is the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, which you can catch right here on the 24 Plus app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Mr. Stephen Willis, always give it up for a clap.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Actually, it's going to be a big, fun weekend, right?
Yeah, Stephen, yeah. I am boycotting claps. I will only do golf claps or celebrity waves at this point. So it's just I think it's a new thing I'm going to start.
So actually, it's really not for you, because a fun fact about Ruben, when he first started working here, his first introduction was the little celebrity wave.
Yeah, so. Something like that. But nobody wants to know how I wave. They want to know how you think Ole Miss looked last weekend, and then we'll start talking about this coming game, which is going to be a fun weekend. But give us your take. After the game was over, you sat down and said what? They looked, boom, good, bad, what?
They looked good and bad. The first quarter, the first quarter was rough. It really was. The turnovers to start the game, the same as the Georgia State game, that needs to stop. Because when you look at the numbers, Ole Miss this season in the first quarter, it's a 7-7 scoreline over in the aggregates. But they've dominated the second, third, and fourth quarters. And against Kentucky, that was no different. They kind of went on a 30-10 run to close out that game, and they kind of dominated the end portion of that game. And that was fantastic. They ran for 220 yards against the defense that the year before they only got 50 yards, not counting quarterback runs. So there's a lot to be encouraged by in the Kentucky game, but they still did not play well for 4 quarters. When this team plays well for 4 quarters, I think it's going to look a little bit different. And maybe Saturday night's where it begins.
Well, Stephen, I don't know if you're much of a betting guy like myself, but my takeaway from that game was I was upset about the line because on this program, again, I was wrong about an Ole Miss spread. I listened to you. I took the 9.5 spread, and at the end of the game, Lane Kiffin calls a timeout, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then Kentucky kicks the field goal, and I'm glad Lane Kiffin apologized because he made me be wrong, Stephen, and I was mad. What is his problem?
Yeah, seriously, that was absolutely weird because Ole Miss was going to cover. We were all going to get the feeling of being right, basically, of what's going on. It's like we called this game. We nailed it. It started out poorly, but at the end of the day, we got where we needed to go, and then that happened at the very end. It didn't affect the outcome of the game or what is being said about the game, but it affected everybody that had a wager on the game. Because if I'm not mistaken, that kick also put the game over.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not only did it miss the spread, you got an over instead of an under off of one timeout to end the game.
Let's talk about this coming weekend. Arkansas is ranked in the top 10 in scoring offense, I believe, right now nationally. They're putting up numbers. And again, they played Arkansas State, Alabama A&M, so it's not like they're playing top-tier teams right now, but they're at least being effective with what they're doing. How does Ole Miss get ready for that? Because Arkansas has got to have something in mind after the whooping they took last year.
Yeah, they're going to be fired up about this game. They're definitely coming to Vaught-Hemingway Stadium for blood, essentially. You could hear it from Sam Pittman's voice. He's not somebody that does the motivational stuff. He kind of wants this. When you factor in the transfers that went from Arkansas to Ole Miss, plus what happened in Fayetteville a year ago, he really wants it. Now, this is a second year with Taylor Green under Bobby Petrino. And Bobby Petrino in a year 2, it's going to be a little bit more complex. He's going to have more trust in his quarterback. And what you see is Taylor Green with 10 touchdowns, even though it's against Alabama A&M, who made Peyton Thorne look like a Unitas candidate, by the way. Arkansas State, he threw 2 picks in that game, but he is a little bit more comfortable in the system because it's a year 2 Bobby Petrino system. The player that I think you need to watch in this game, and nobody's talking about him outside of the hardcores, is Mike Washington, the running back for Arkansas. Bobby Petrino relies on play-action pass. He is as dominant of a play-action pass coach of any coach that has existed in the last 2 decades. If you want to stop Arkansas, if you want to get off on a good foot, you stop the running back run. You stop Mike Washington and force this to be a one-dimensional game with Taylor Green responsible for everything. If that happens, you're going to win the game going away. If Ole Miss, who has given up explosive runs against Georgia State and Kentucky, continues to do that against Arkansas, and Bobby Petrino gets to get in his bag a little bit, it could be problems. Last year, he scored 31 points on that Ole Miss defense that led the SEC in scoring defense. The year before, when he was the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M, the second half of the game, he was able to get in his bag, and he turned Max Johnson into the left-handed version of Tom Brady, at least for a half. And all of a sudden, Texas A&M was a blocked field goal away from beating an 11-win Ole Miss team that year. So you have to be careful with Bobby Petrino, but the way you stop it is through stopping the run game. If you can stop the running back run, I think it's going to be pretty good.
So, with that being said, what do you think about Austin Simmons going into this game? Because through 2 weeks, it's been kind of hot and cold. I mean, we can look at him from the eye test and be like, okay, he seems okay, but stats-wise, he's already thrown 4 interceptions.
Yep.
And now he has an even tougher test against a better defense than Georgia State or Kentucky. Well, Kentucky and Arkansas defense probably hand in hand, but still, what do you feel about Austin Simmons going into this game?
I think he's just a young quarterback. If you look at what Austin Simmons, he struggled in his first spring game whenever he was unveiled to everybody a couple years ago, almost did the flag football thing. He actually struggled throwing the ball in that. He struggled in the first scrimmage where he was the starter. He struggled in his first home start. He struggled in his first road start. The thing about those scrimmages, the second and third scrimmage, is he played pretty well. So we'll see in this Arkansas, now that the new factor is over, you're not going on the road for the first time as the starter, you're not playing a game at home as a starter, is he relaxed? And also, he was injured a little bit at the end of that Kentucky game. Does that change the way that Lane Kiffin attacks Arkansas? Does it look a little bit different? Are they relying on Kejuan Lacey a little bit more? Because I mean, he looks good. He looks legit. He's leading the SEC in rushing right now. If that happens with the weak point of the Arkansas defense being the defensive line, this has a chance to be a get-right game of sorts for Austin Simmons. Now, it could also go unbelievably wrong. We've all seen that. But the elements are there for him to have an efficient a game manager game to where he goes through and puts a 0 in the interception column and kind of straightens everything out.
Yeah, coaches always say, you only get so many my bads, right? We've talked about this in the past. I would say, to your point, Stephen, that the first half mistakes, he's kind of out of my bads. Now it's time to prove you can start and finish a game, because against elite competition, those mistakes really do bite you in the butt.
Yeah, if the Kentucky game happens against Arkansas, it's not going to be 10-0. Yeah. It's going to be 14-0 with all of the pressure on your offense, so you don't go 3 and out and punt, because it might be 21-0 and the game's over. Mm-hmm. So Austin really needs to take care of the ball and stop whatever's causing these slow starts to happen, because later in the game, after the first quarter, his rebounds have been fantastic. His 4th and 1 that he completed against Kentucky was an unbelievable throw. But the first quarter, for whatever reason, whenever the defensive script is out there, he is struggling right now. And Ole Miss needs to figure out a way to get Austin Simmons past that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, real quick, either of you guys ever watched Any Given Sunday with Davey Fox? He's Willie Beeman. I
haven't watched that movie in a while, but I remember
throwing up in the first half and then killing it after that. Yeah. Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, football's about the inches. Football's about the inches.
So we stand on the offensive side. You brought up Kejuan Lacey, who, I don't know, Stephen, maybe it's us being biased, but I think he might be not only the best running back in the SEC, he might be probably one of the best running backs in college football. I just love to watch that guy. What do you think?
He has elite contact balance. Like, if everybody remembers Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State last year, it's kind of the same thing where you think you have him, but no, you don't have him. And that is really cool. When you put in the track speed and the vision that he has, man, it's an elite combination. And Ole Miss hasn't even really used him in the pass game yet. Once he is allowed to get out in space to where he's going up against cornerbacks and safeties instead of the inside run game, I think this offense is going to open up quite a bit more. We saw in the Kentucky game when they started shifting from running inside zone plays and power plays on the inside to running off tackle and running outside, there's a little explosiveness in his game, and that is going to force defenses to scheme for that, which is going to open up other stuff. Kejuan Lacey is going to make Austin Simmons' job easier. And it just needs to happen. As everybody adjusts to what's going on right now, everybody's adjusting to the best offensive player that Ole Miss has being Kejuan Lacey.
To that point, though, you got to give some love to the big fellas up front, because none of those holes open up. And that's interesting, because I know Ole Miss was struggling with some early injuries in the preseason on that line, having to move some guys around. So talk about how impressive that offensive line has been at this point then.
Yeah, I think it was the SEC network that said there was 158 yards before contact against Kentucky. And if you have 158 yards before contact, at least in the rushing game, they did their job. And once the quick game got mixed with it, it was pretty fantastic. Now, there's a little bit of a shaky moment from time to time in the pass game. They haven't gotten that completely ironed out, but this week it looks like another piece might be returning in Terez Davis from the University of Maryland. He's not listed on the injury report on Wednesday night. Luke Haas is not listed on the injury report for Wednesday night either. So Ole Miss is about as healthy as they've been since the beginning of camp, save the Austin Simmons ankle thing.
So we got to get you out of here, Stephen, before we run out of time. Quick prediction again. Let's try this again. What is your prediction for this week against Arkansas?
Listen, this game is the drunk uncle of SEC football games. It's never what you expect. Everybody's expecting a high-scoring game. I'm thinking it's going to look a little bit more like the 2023 game, and I don't know if Ole Miss is going to cover. I'm not exactly sure where the line is, but I think the final score is going to be about Ole Miss 28, Arkansas 21.
Last time I checked, the line was at 7.5. We'll talk about it in 901 Bet, but I believe it's 7.5.
Yeah, I think over the last 10 years or so, this game is decided by 10 points or fewer or 2 touchdowns or fewer. So to your point, it's not going to be the barn burner that some people are thinking it's going to be.
I'm not going to give my take until we get to Bluff City line, but we just wanted to hear it from the man himself, Stephen. We always appreciate your time.
Have a great rest of your day, Stephen. We appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it, guys.
As always, great checking in with Stephen. Gives us great insight. So right now we've covered Memphis, we've covered Ole Miss. Now we got to get to the Tennessee Vols.
Absolutely. The third of our teams here in the Tennessee Mid-South area. We checked in with a special person on this program earlier this week. It's our friends up in Knoxville at our news partner in WBIR. Take a listen.
All right, it's time for our Tennessee Take. We've covered several schools. We always got to make sure we leave some time for the Tennessee Vols. For that, we're joined by a special guest, right, Rich?
Yeah, our guy on the ground. Welcome to the show, Mr. Elijah Nixon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Let's get right to it. Huge game. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger, really, than what it is this early in the season. You got Georgia and Tennessee both ranked. Georgia number 6, right? And Tennessee jumped up several spots. What's your thoughts on this one coming up this weekend?
I said it before the season started. I think Tennessee has a chance to upset Georgia, only because of the simple fact it's early in the year, and I don't see enough from Gunnar Stockton. I got a chance to actually see him live last year in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame, and I wasn't really impressed. And then, so far this year against Marshall, I know he had 4 total touchdowns, 2 on the air and 2 on the ground. But if you know, Marshall actually is a whole new team that came in because most of that roster followed the head coach down to Southern Miss, so they had to build a whole new roster. So they, of course, blew them out. And then against Austin Peay last week, it's like they struggled. But the simple fact is because Gunnar doesn't take shots downfield, and when Tennessee has Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson out, you have to take those shots down the field. And if Gunnar doesn't do that, I really think Tennessee has a chance of winning for the first time since 2016.
So, Elijah, I don't know how much you play video games, but when you do play video games, there's an easy, medium, and hard. And so if you look at Tennessee's games so far, I mean, you could say the easy game was last week, and then the medium game was Syracuse. Now we get to the hard game. So from what you've seen leading up to this game, do you think Tennessee is ready for this challenge against UGA? Because we're talking about Kirby Smart. When it comes to their rivals, he's 30-2. So this is as tough of a challenge as it gets for Tennessee. So what do you think about their chances?
I think their chances are really good. I think Tennessee could actually win this game, and it's not because of what the obvious is. Everybody talks about Joey. I think Joey is the guy, but they have a 3-headed monster in that backfield with Star Thomas, with Deshaun Bishop, and with Peyton Lewis. I mean, Peyton Lewis is not getting enough credit for what he does when he goes into the game, but their running game is what, to me, is going to separate it because I know Georgia has a physical defensive line and a physical front seven in general, but if you can take that offense off the field and try to create some points as much as you can with that run game, I think that'll be a reason. And I think that hard thing that we talk about, if you talk about the Hall of Fame level of games, I think they can actually execute and win this one.
What about the advantage of when we watch games? I have not been to a game at Tennessee yet. But when I watch those games on TV, that place feels like it is a massive home field advantage.
I'm happy you say that because I'm going to be honest with you, this actually be my first time in Neyland. Saturday.
Oh,
So
wow.
I get the luxury of it. I haven't been to Neyland. I've been to the Atlanta game, which was my first game covering with the Vols, and the second one I was in the studio anchoring the show. So this will be my first one, and I'm ready to see how it rocks too. But from what I heard and with fans and people around the studio was telling me, that it's nothing like Neyland, and the place expect that place to be rocking. I mean, even when you're shooting, you're going to be like this with your camera. So expect it to be rocking a little bit in there.
See, I was going to ask you about the whole water situation because, last week it was so much rain coming down. You had fans tweeting about, hey, man, can we get a squeegee out here? Because, it was standing water. So hopefully I don't have that issue, this coming weekend.
No, I talked to the meteorologist like 700 times. I'm like, brother, are you sure it's not raining? He was like, we're not going to see a drop. I'm like, all right, cool. So, I don't think the weather would be a key factor in this one. I think it'll be fairly nice. I don't think it'll be too hot. I don't think it'll be too cold. I think it'll be right at that temperature where I really call football weather.
Now, there was obviously so much talk about the quarterback drama in the offseason. It's, that it was almost overshadowing stuff. But you said it earlier. Joey's the man now. He's settled in. What are your thoughts on watching him play so far up close and personal?
I think Joey deserves more credit than what people think. I think, the whole talk was, does he turn over the football? How is he going to go with Josh Heupel's system when Josh Heupel, he likes to take his shots, but he likes to make sure he throw into wide open receivers. Joey likes to take his chances, right? Joey likes to give his guys a fair chance to go up and get the football, even if they're well covered by a defender. And what we see in the first 2 weeks is that he has a mixture of both. He takes what the defense gives him, but he also goes out and throws the ball deep to Mike Matthews, to Braylon Staley. And I think who his favorite target is going to be when it comes to test of time of a Miles Kitselman, the tight end. So I think that, he is very, very good, and we don't give him really that much credit for it because of Josh Heupel's system. But he also, right now, he has made all the right reads, and I want to give you guys a little quick stat. 5 touchdowns in 6 quarters with no interceptions. That's how good he is. 6 quarters of play, he threw 5 touchdowns with no interceptions. That's how good Joey Aguilar is.
So we've talked a lot about offense, like Aguilar. You're talking about that running back group. But tell me, what do you see from the defensive side? Because at the end of the day, especially when in the SEC, that's what really is going to determine who wins, is what defense really comes out to play and makes the stops.
And I'm happy you say that, man. So they have a lot of guys on defense that, that's not playing. Of course, Ricky Gibson, who's an experienced corner, and Jamar McCoy, who's first team All-SEC preseason. He's recovering from an ACL that he tore in January. So they got some young guys coming in there, and so far they have played pretty well. But the model for this team that has been, since camp for Josh Heupel and his Vols is young guys don't have time to be young. And right now they're really, really good right now. You got these guys coming in. Arian Carter's leading the way, especially that line. He's a stud at linebacker. He plays with an attitude before the game is kicked off. You can see he has that mean mug, but he leads the way. He's a linebacker. Him and T-Lander, they set the tone. 2 linebackers set the tone for them. And then a secondary plays off of them. And Colton Hood, the transfer from Colorado, who was a Dion last year, he has been phenomenal so far. People have thrown his way, but he hasn't really given up too many big plays. I mean, he bats down the ball. He hasn't get an interception return. He has a fumble return. He haven't had an interception yet. But I think if they try him with Zachariah Branch from Georgia, I think that's the matchup that we need to look at. Colton Hood and Zachariah Branch, and I think that'll be the X factor of this game.
Oh, beautiful.
So Elijah, I normally on this program give my Bluff City lines, which is basically kind of my betting thing. Now, we leave Tennessee out because it's technically not part of the Bluff City area. So just give me a little bit of a preview a little bit. So we'll consider this my ahead of the line. I'll just keep it simple. Let's go money line. Who do you got for this weekend between Tennessee, UGA? Pick your winner.
I got Tennessee pulling off the upset 34-31. Only for the simple fact that I said, one is in Neyland. Which atmosphere I can't wait to see. But I think also it's because I think that Gunnar Stockton, if he decides not to throw the ball downfield, I think it will be a long day for Georgia. But if he does throw the ball down the field, it may go another way. But he has yet to show that he's taking shots and taking them consistently. So that's what I'm waiting to see. And I think that's what Tennessee is going to pull off the upset because of that.
Just for the record, he couldn't have said anything else and still work where he has to work. Then he got you, bro. Then he got you. So we're gonna let that one ride.
Hey, man.
Elijah, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Elijah Dixon, joining us and giving us all that insight, much-needed insight, so the people here in the Mid-South, here in the Bluff City, can get caught up on the Tennessee Vols. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll check in with you hopefully again next week and get some more insight.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have much more. Don't forget, though, you can watch that Tennessee and Georgia game right here on ABC 24. It's a 2:30 game. We'll be watching it here. We'll be right back.
What up, and welcome to 901 Bets. Think of this as sports betting for dummies right here in Memphis. Now, before we get rolling, quick reminder, if gambling has become a problem for you, hit that Tennessee gambling hotline, that number right on your screen, 800-889-9789. All right, y'all, today's Bankroll Basics is all about something you'll hear tossed around a lot in sports betting, hit rate. So what's that? Hit rate is simply the percentage of wagers you win compared to the total number of wagers you place. It's one way to measure how you're doing, but keep in mind, it doesn't factor in the odds or payouts. So a bettor could have a solid hit rate, but still lose money if the bets are mostly heavy favorites with low returns. And if y'all were just curious how I've been doing on some of my own predictions, let's check in on my Bluff City Lines record from last weekend. I went 2-2. I got Memphis covering that 13.5 spread against Georgia State right, and I also hit on the Ole Miss money line against Kentucky. But I missed on Memphis covering the 7.5 first half spread against Georgia State, and Ole Miss covering 9.5 against Kentucky didn't come through either. So for the weekend, that makes me 2-2, and overall on the season, I'm sitting at 3-3. So that's a 50% hit rate, right in the middle. Or to put it in Memphis terms, that's like shooting 3 for 6 from the free throw line at FedEx Forum. Not great, not terrible, just right down the line. So remember, hit rate is a quick way to track performance, but it doesn't tell the whole story about profit. That's why bankroll management matters, people, just as much as calling winners. Anyways, time for this week's Bluff City Lines. I've got a couple of picks on the board that should catch Memphis fans' attention. Let's start with the hometown Tigers. I'm taking Memphis to cover the 3.5 spread against Troy at -115 odds. I'm also riding with the money line at -185. Now here's why. The Tigers haven't lost a game against the spread this season. They're a perfect 2-0 as at least a 3.5 point favorite. Meanwhile, Troy is just one win against the spread all year. I like Memphis to keep that ATS streak alive. Now let's head on over to Oxford. I'm rolling with Ole Miss 7.5 against Arkansas, which is at about even money. So here's the deal. Both these teams rank near the top in explosive play offenses, those chunk plays of 20 yards or more. Well, Arkansas, they sit at third place, while Ole Miss, they're at second. But here's the difference. The Rebels built that reputation against tougher defenses like that gritty win at Kentucky. And the Razorbacks, well, they've been carving up tissue paper. Plus, despite all the turnover on defense, Ole Miss has actually held up well. I trust them to contain Razorback quarterback Taylor Green in the pocket and limit Arkansas's big play shots downfield. So to recap, I got Memphis 3.5, Memphis money line, and Ole Miss 7.5. We'll see how these Bluff City lines, we'll see if they can keep on rolling. All right, let's merge ahead of the line and bets from Bill into one thing when we talk about Tennessee versus Georgia. I'm rolling with our guy, WBIR's Elijah Nixon on this one. I like Tennessee to cover 3.5 and the money line at +150. Vols are 2-0, scored 72 points in their opener, and they've won 9 straight at Neyland. It's going to be rocking there. Quarterback Joey Aguilar, he's making his SEC debut, and he's averaging 267 passing yards per game to go along with 5 touchdowns. And check this out. Tennessee hasn't allowed a sack yet. The Vols boast a strong offensive line with that murderous row of running backs, whether it's Deshaun Bishop, you got Thomas Lewis, and they're averaging 252 yards combined. Georgia's been solid against the run, but Tennessee's multi-threat attack will test them. Bottom line, I got the Vols because of their firepower to cover, and they might even pull off the upset. I agree with our guy Elijah. As always, send me your takes. If you have a betting question, terminology, any of that good stuff you're unsure of, send it my way. You want my opinion on a slip or a ticket you have? Send it my way. Man, if you just want me to even spotlight your W, we will give you flowers on this program. We have fun over here, man. So at me on X at RD2Sports, text the number 901-321-7520, or just use the hashtag ABC24Floor. But in saying all that, remember folks, producer Leanna, bring it up for me one more time. This content is for entertainment purposes only. ABC24 and its affiliates do not encourage gambling. Viewer discretion is advised. Any betting decisions you make are solely your responsibility. We are not responsible for any financial losses or wins resulting from information presented on this program. That's a wrap, and that will do it for today's 901 Bets. We've got Say What coming up. We'll be right back.
All right, it's time for our Say What segment. Say what? Here's what it is. The transfer portal shrinking. If you're not aware of what this means, there's been some discussion, right? And some people within college football have proposed the idea of changing the college football transfer portal window, changing it from having all of that, basically that month of December, and then having that time frame in April, to just having one 10-day window in January. It'd be like January 2nd through the 11th. That'll be the only time you could enter the transfer portal in college football. So do you agree, disagree, say what? What's your take on it?
I think that they should have a limited time. Like, why limit it in between the window? I mean, basically, the transfer portal is free agency, so why
Is free agency not limited in professional sports?
Yeah, but you got more time. Free agency isn't limited over 10 days.
No, but...
Imagine you have 10 days to give a decision.
So here's the reason behind it. You're saying that they should not limit that window. You're saying they should have that time. And I'm saying they should limit the window. And here's why you should limit the window.
Because of all the chaos or whatever?
It's crazy. Imagine trying to build a roster when the whole month of December, some dude who hasn't been playing as much, maybe he's a young guy that you're trying to build, now jumps in the portal in December, you're getting ready for bowl games, he's gone.
Okay.
Or you're in April, you're in spring ball trying to create your roster and your depth chart, find out who's going to fit and who isn't. Some kid that you signed and you brought in now suddenly gets in the transfer portal and leaves because he's not going to be the starter. It gives too much freedom. There is such a thing as too much freedom with this.
That's the price of doing business.
There needs to be, and as somebody who coaches basketball and is involved in this college basketball world a lot, I've said for years since it started, there need to be strict guidelines around it. You want to get the transfer portal? Cool. You get in at one time without having to sit. Dudes who are in there 4 or 5 times, insane. There should definitely be regulations, and this might be the first step to better regulations.
I still think, though, and I hear everything you're saying, I think that sometimes it can become very convoluted. You might, especially when you got to think about coaches. Because, you know, at the end of the season, we have the coaching carousel. So a guy might go in, commit into this school to go play for this coach, and then that coach just leaves. And so now he can't switch schools now because the transfer portal? So what would you do on that then?
When you, to your point, which I think is a fair point, you do have that situation where, man, I came in to play for this guy and now he's left and now I don't want to be anymore. Every college coach will tell you, before you ever sign, pick a school that you will go to even if this coaching staff wasn't here.
That's easier said than done. We even do that in real life. You know what I'm saying?
Say, where would you go if you didn't even play the sport anymore? Would you still go to school here? Because what happens if football is not a thing for you anymore? What you could do? All I'm saying is, it is the wild, wild west.
It is.
And when it's that much chaos going on, You can't build a roster. You can't build culture. Culture is a thing of the past in so many of these college football programs and college basketball because you're bringing in 6, 7, 8. In football, you're bringing in 20, 30 new guys. In basketball, you're bringing in 6, 7, 8 new guys every single year. They don't know what the culture of your program is. They've been there for 3 months. So there absolutely needs to be a window, a shrinking of that window so that people can say, hey, I played here all year. It's January. I'm obviously not happy here. I'm getting in the transfer portal.
I do feel for, like, especially on the basketball side, you'll look at teams, I think Baylor is a good example of they'll go into the offseason where they literally have no roster at all. Like, no carryovers, where you look at their roster as 0, and then they'll just go straight to the transfer portal and straight hitting the recruiting line. So I feel for that. But with everything that a kid has to go through and with the NIL and the school registration and stuff, sometimes I think you should have as much time as you need possible. Just like with us when we're making a college decision, we got all the time in the world. Yeah, we don't got 10 days.
Yeah, but we're not playing a college sport.
True.
You picked the life you chose, right? You chose that life, and that life needs to have boundaries. There has to have boundaries, or else it's going to get so buck wild and so out of control that you'll never be able to get it back to where it needs to be. People love college football. You have to keep some level of what they love about it. People love rooting for their guy on their team and not. People do not like the idea that when a new season starts, well, I don't really know who's on my team yet. I love this team, but I got to figure out who I like on the team. I'm glad they're shrinking it. I hope it stays because I think it will make college coaches' lives a little bit simpler, right? The only thing that'll be a problem is if you're coaching in a bowl game in January. Yeah. Now you've got to deal with trying to keep your kids on roster while they're having the opportunity to get in the portal.
So under this thing, would you not like what happened last year when, who was that, the UNLV quarterback, he entered the portal after like week 2? So under this new rules, he can't do that?
He can't do that. Under these new rules, he'd stay on that team until January, then he could enter the portal in January. And now it doesn't mean you can't be picked out of the portal after that. It just means you only have that window to enter your name. By January, you know if you want to stay at a school or not, right? So all this doing it in December and then doing it again in April, I hate the April window. So my say what? Go ahead and shrink that bad boy down.
This is the first time, Ruben, that you've got me to agree with you on this program. Well, normally I'm sticking to my guns, but this time I'm going to rock with you on this one.
Your guns are empty, brother. All right,
got me.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the 24th Floor. Shout out to everybody who made today's show possible.
Especially Leanna Davis and Brooklyn High for their work behind the scenes, putting the show together. Big shout out to our guy, Jonah Dillon from the Commercial Appeal. And of course, our guy, Stephen Willis from the Locked On Podcast.
Great information from all those. Also appreciate Elijah checking in with our Tennessee take as well today. All right, have a great day, everybody. We'll see you on the other side pretty soon.
Yeah.
So I'm...
Continue with us and watch free now on the 24 Plus app everywhere you stream.